Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mystic Mondays. And today we have not one, but two special guests. They are amazing and also fellow Salvadoreñas. That's so rare. I rarely get to meet Salvadoreñas in this community. So I'm so happy to have you guys on.
I'm Christina.
And I'm Carmen.
And we host Espooky Tales together. It's a podcast about Latin American haunted places, myths, legends, folklore, sometimes true crime. Actually, now new episodes also include true crime almost all the time. And Carmen just joined as the official co-host before she was the unofficial official co-host. So
right.
yeah.
That's amazing. And it's interesting too, right? Because I noticed that you guys as family are doing something that is fun and you guys are very passionate about. How has that dynamic been? Has it brought you guys a lot closer together? Have you guys had like discovery with certain stories? Because I'll give you an example. So when I was a kid, I had like a paranormal experience that I chalked it off as a prank and I just not took the story seriously. But then when I was telling the story with my sister on a live stream, we actually ended up uncovering more creepy details about it. So have you guys ever discovered or dived deeper? Like, how has that dynamic been?
I feel like we already talked about the paranormal a little too much anyway. So I don't think any of our like stories, family stories. I know there's things that we'll be talking and then I don't remember a lot and Carmen will fill in the details, but not the ghost stories. Those are always pretty. It's usually the like more trauma, like, oh, our parents hit us, you know? That's the stuff that I like don't remember a lot. Yeah. But ghost stories? No. Those are pretty, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we're already really close. And so, I mean, if it got any closer, I don't think that's possible.
we'd be like, yeah, the weird ones that dress the same. And
yeah, you know the ones.
Yeah.
We all know the ones.
We've all seen them.
Wait, did you guys ever dress the same? Like, did your parents ever make you wear like the same outfits?
Yeah.
When we were younger, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, as you get older, I think everyone wants to like be their own person, and so we still dress similar but different. And if we were wearing the same thing, we're like, someone changed. Like we can't be the weird twins that dress the same in college. Like we saw them and we're like, we're not doing that.
What was that conversation like when you guys like, I just curiosity, what was that conversation like when you told your parents like, okay, we're our own people? Like, what was that like?
I actually don't remember because it was like when we were little that our mom would buy us like matching clothes, like maybe like 4 or 5, the oldest. And then as we got older, at least I don't remember, but my mom said that I used to ask Christina to choose all of my outfits.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
and
that.
I guess that would be the conversation where my mom was like, you have to stop asking Christina to choose your clothes and stop doing everything she says because you're each your own person.
She was the one who said it, not us.
Yeah.
So it was a different. Okay,
our mom forced us to be our own people.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Well, you know, thank God for your mom because you guys were just
we would be like weirdos. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are paranormal experiences that you've had? Like, what's a story that you guys would love to share with the viewer?
Well, we have the same one, so it happened to you, Christina. I was just there, so
you were just there. Well, like growing up, everyone but us had stories about the houses we lived in. But Carmen and I don't know, we were just like in our own little oblivious world, I guess, because we never saw or heard anything. There was a room that our brother refused to go in. It was supposed to be his room, actually. That's what it was. And he refused to go in there. We would play in there all day, and he's like, no, it's like that's where the shadows are, is what he would say. He said he saw these shadows. And so we were just like, oh, that's the thing he says, whatever. I never really I don't think I never didn't believe him. I'm sure he's seen something, but I just like at one point I'm like, oh my gosh, shut up about the shadows. Like I'm over it. We were in middle school, so that's like, stop. We get it. And so we were all sitting in my dad's trailer, and he was sitting, I think, across from me, and then maybe were you next to him, Carmen? Do you remember? where
I
you were
think
sitting?
so because
Yeah.
if you remember like the setup, it was like you came in and then there was the little table that you could pull out, and then there was chairs you could put in front of the table, and then there was like a longer like sectional type or like a
Yes,
couch
and
type
that's
thing.
where you and him were sitting, and
Yeah,
I was just in a
on the table.
chair on the other side. And so he was like, "The shadows are next to you," and I was like, "Oh, really? Are they? Are they next to me?" And I was like, "Are they here?" And I was fake punching where the shadows supposedly were, and then he was like, "Stop it! They don't like it when you do that." And I was like, "What are they gonna do?" And then the chair I was sitting on, like I wasn't leaning back or anything, but the chair I was sitting on was like pulled from under me, and I fell on my butt and then his ass looked at us so serious, like just staring at me and said, "See, they don't like it when you do that." And we were like, "Oh my God." And so we just like ran to my dad because this trailer was in the back of it's so illegal, but this trailer was in the back of his shop. And it's where we stayed during the week and it's where he worked. And so we ran to his office and like I tried to tell him. And then he has the saying that he always tells us, always. And he's like, "You need to be scared of the what is it? The living, not the dead." And I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
someone just pulled my chair and I'm scared." Like, so yeah, that's
My jaw just dropped, as you can see. Well, I want to dissect that story a little bit more. So, basically, your brother you guys lived in a trailer, and one of the rooms in the trailer, your brother just never liked it from the very beginning. Do you think?
Oh, that was a separate one.
The separate one.
Yeah,
the
Okay.
that
shadows
was in our
just like
house.
followed him.
They were
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It was
Because
nonstop for him.
yeah, we moved a ton as kids. And so we were in a house in Oakland, but this trailer was in the back of my dad's work. And so we were always like, that's where we were during the day. But no matter where he was, he saw these shadows. Like that house was on 35th Street in Oakland. We moved to a different house, somewhere like on 68 Seminary Street in
It was on
Oakland.
Seminary, yeah.
Same story. Shadows, he saw them in the house. We later moved to Modesto, California. Same thing. He saw shadows there too. Like he saw them
But he
everywhere.
also saw an old man in his
Yeah.
room that would supposedly look in from the window.
Yeah. That.
What?
Yeah.
Hold up. So, can you explain that story? Like, explain the setting? What was the man doing? Just staring.
So he said that, I don't know if it was every night, but so our brother used to run, like wake up in the middle of the night, or I don't know if he would ever went to sleep because of these things that he was seeing, but he would like run upstairs to our mom's room because he was scared. And I mean, I would do the same if I was seeing the things he was seeing. But yeah, he says that. So his bed was kind of not really facing the window, but it was like on one corner of the room, and then the window was on like the other corner, like kind of, I guess, diagonal. But and I don't know why he didn't have curtains or what. Like
He did have curtains.
well, for some reason, he says that the old man would look like that, like in the window. But I'm like, yeah, how would you see that if the curtains were?
I think they were light curtains, like
Oh yeah, they were. They were
like
sheer.
white, like sheer. Yes, there
Yeah.
you go. Yeah, which is ew.
Very
Yeah.
creepy.
So creepy.
So you're saying that he would experience this, and he was in middle school. Did he experience this after middle school into his adulthood?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah,
He still
yeah.
has. I think he got used to it at some point. But yeah, I remember we'd be driving, and he's like, "Oh, there's something in that cemetery there, like leaning over." And I'm like, "Don't fucking tell me, like, please." He moved near me because now we're in Washington and Carmen's still in California. And there's a Burlington in where we live, and we would go together. And I'm like, "Have you heard like our mom say something weird about this Burlington?" Because I heard like we were walking together in the parking lot with my mom, and I heard like a disembodied laugh, and I was like, oh my god, what was that?" And my mom was like, "Stop, like it's over, like get over it." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like someone just laughed by my ear?" And I'm like being all dramatic like I do, and she's just like nonchalant and she'll like, "Come on, let's just go." And I'm like, "How do you expect me to move on from this?" But she did, and so I had to. And so that same Burlington, I told my brother that story, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've seen a little girl here." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Are you serious right now?" Because I heard a laugh, like a little giggle, and if I had to guess, like, what was laughing, I would say a little girl, but I didn't like want to think about it more. So I like, blocked it out. And then he said that on a later occasion, I hadn't even told him what we heard, just that I was with my mom and something weird happened. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I can see that. Cause like, I feel really nervous in here. And I also saw a little girl." And I was like, "Oh my God." So, yeah.
Oh my
I hadn't
god, that
heard
is
that
spooky.
part. Yeah.
So it sounds to me that your brother is a medium, essentially. He definitely does have a knack for speaking to the dead. Do you guys ever feel like that transferred over to you guys? Like, do you ever feel like you've had any moments where you've received downloads?
No, I don't think so. Other than the time my chair got pulled because of him, I think
Oh,
I
well,
would
you
blame
know
him.
what?
Uh-huh.
What about, so we don't remember this because we were little, but our mom says
Oh,
that,
yeah.
well, we were like two probably, right? Two or three.
Mm-hmm.
And she was showing us pictures of her family in Mexico. And she got to the picture of our great grandfather, who we call Mi Velo. And we were like, oh, he visited us last night. And she's like, what? Oh, also, he had just passed away. Um, Let me start with that. Sorry, Mi Velo, I forgot the most important part. um, so yeah, she said that we were like, oh, he just visited us last night, and that we told her that he came down like in a cloud type thing from like the ceiling. And that he read us stories. No, I don't think, because he couldn't read. He was telling us stories, um, talking about, I don't know, about his life in Mexico and stuff like that. And I know that she has like specific things that he talked to us about, and it was like more beautiful, but I don't remember it anymore.
Right, me neither.
Um, Not even when
Wow.
she retold us or whatever. But yeah, there was that time, and he had just passed away. So she said that he visited us, and I think really that's the only time that we ever saw something like actually saw
Wow.
something.
You know what's interesting is, well, there's two things I want to talk about. Well, I'll talk about this because it's the most recent one, but the cloud thing, I've read in other, like Reddit. I even have some like books from like the 70s, like it was like a magazine, like a paranormal magazine type of thing. They talked about that, how they see like a cloud or like a little opening window, and it's like the deceased saying goodbye. So
Mm-hmm.
this
Wow.
is like not just like unique to you guys in that respect. But other than that, like that story gave me chills. Like, because how would you know? Like, how would you process that? You guys are 2 years old. That's very compelling. Well, the other thing too that I also wanted to bring up is the shadow people thing. I know I had Aiden on here and we were talking about shadow people, and one of the things I always like to talk to people about is that there's this misconception with shadows and how people think that shadow people are evil or they're just low entities. Like, have you heard of that phenomenon that shadows are just not good to see?
I assumed when I heard about the shadows from my brother that they were like scary, like dangerous things. So,
And because they pulled my chair, I also
right.
assumed
But
that they were mean.
in their defense, you
I
were
was like,
annoying them, and you
yeah,
were being very annoying.
that is true. That is a good point. Because now that I've, like, have had a spooky tales and we've done like a couple episodes where people have sent in their stories, they don't always seem bad. There's some like really good stories where sometimes there's just like a sign or a symbol, like this is a dark time for you, like this is why we're here, like, or I've even heard of them being like angel type things. So I don't
Oh.
know.
That's interesting. Yeah, because like, I was telling Aiden this, I said, well, I feel like shadows, and not always, right? There could be a number of reasons why they appear in shadow form. But one of the things that I found most commonly is that they cannot fully manifest because it takes so much energy for them to even like have any energy to do anything. So the fact that like they move the chair on you, like that's a lot of energy. Like I'm kind of not surprised that
I
they
must
show.
have been very annoying because yeah, they were like all the energy we have, we're using it right now on this pitch. Like
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like that's probably why they showed up as like a shadow, but also to your brother, if he kept seeing them wherever he went, like I am almost thinking that it's just that he saw spirits wherever he went. He just hadn't fully developed like the third eye ability to see the spirit in full apparition. There's this story about like the one that I'm always sharing because this one just struck to me. It was about the Hill House and how this these two people went to the Hill House in Texas, and one person saw a younger version of that spirit, while the other person saw an older version of that spirit. But
wow.
like, the same hair, what they were wearing, and everything. And I'm like, eerie, but just age difference. And so that,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that always stuck to me too because it's like I also think that spirit sometimes just manifest in a way that like our mind can comprehend too.
That's so
And so
interesting. It sounds like it's personalized.
yes,
Like a personalized sighting. That would make
Right.
sense because him and my mom both have like always seen so many like entities, and no matter where they go, my mom would be like, "I have a weird feeling in this store," and I'm like, "Oh, okay,
oh,
I don't."
And then you're
and
like,
and
and don't tell me
so
more about
yeah,
it.
and I don't want to know actually. No, and I think they have the same gift. Like our dad
Yeah.
also has stories, but not nearly as much as our mom and my brother. And it's weird because they also look alike, even when they
oh,
were kids. Like, when he was a kid, there's a picture of our mom, and she has pigtails. And if you cover her pigtails, it's our brother. Like, there's no like if you showed that picture. Actually, we did show that picture to his daughter. We covered her, my mom's pigtails, and he's like, "Oh, it's my papa," and it's like, "No, that's your grandma," and because they look so alike. So I'm like, it has to be a thing with them, and that they see spirits, and they also look alike, and we don't see anything, and we don't look as much as like alike as they do. So I don't know. It's weird.
interesting. That is very, very interesting. I can definitely feel I can definitely attest to that because I feel like for me and my mom and my sisters, I feel like I have obviously the most that's into the paranormal and in like the other supernatural things and ghost stories. And I feel like my mom's side of the family is very much like that. But I mean, it's a little bit different. We all look alike. But my sister's a dreamer. My mom's a dreamer. And then my other sister is not much of a dreamer. She's like in the middle, like she kind of believes, but kind of doesn't believe. And then I'm like, no, I'm embracing all of it. So it's
All
interesting.
in.
Yeah, exactly. So, speaking of, paranormal experiences and your family and all that, I know that you guys are mixed. You're half Mexican and half Salvadorian. Um, and so you guys have had a great combination of hearing lovely urban legends from Mexico, but also lovely scary stories from El Salvador. What have been like this out of all of those urban legends and ghost stories that you've heard? What have been like your favorite? Like, what are the ones that really give you the chills and you would like to see people talk about more?
I love the story of El Cadejo. That's one of my favorites just because I feel like, I mean, there's like these big black dogs that scare people all over the world. But like in El Salvador and I think Guatemala and Honduras, it's the same thing, El Cadejo. But like, you go up a little more and you get to Mexico and they don't know what El Cadejo is. It's not a
Oh.
thing there. But El Cadejo, it has different like origin stories. So one of the versions, because there's I think I want to say like three that I know of for sure. But one of them is that there was like a man, he's a farmer, and it's like I don't know, probably like colonial times. And this man is a farmer. He goes to work every day. He comes back, and every time he is on his way back, he sees a white dog, and it's just sitting there, like watching or guarding. And he's like, "That's so weird because this dog wasn't there before." And so he passes by it like a week, and then on the last day of that week, the dog turns to him and looks at him and says something like, "I've come here. I've been sent from God to like protect you." And the thing that I was protecting you from is gone, so I'm gonna be going now. And the guy was too stunned to speak. He's like, "What?
The
This
woman was
dog
too
just
sad
spoke
to
to me."
speak.
And so that's the white Cadejo, but at the same time, there's the black Cadejo, and that's what the white one is, like protecting people from, because the black one is supposedly either like the devil's dog or the devil itself. It's got red eyes, it's big, it's shaggy, uh has like a chain around it you can hear when it's walking, and like if you see it, the only thing that can save you is the other Cadejo, the good one, and it's also white, which is I don't know, it's a little iffy there, but that's the one that can save you. And it also the white Cadejo protects you from La Ciguanaba, which is another legend from El Salvador.
Oh,
So
I don't remember that.
yeah,
Well, she's my favorite legend from El Salvador.
I do love
Ooh.
her.
So actually, now that I have you guys here, because I remember I did a story. Actually, no, I don't want to. I don't want to. Let me pause for a second because you mentioned the whole like white cadejo and the black cadejo. And it's interesting because we were in Denver not too long ago. We met at the True Crime Podcast Festival in person, and Riverdale Road has an urban legend very similar to that actually, where it
Really?
comes from the indigenous people. Where if you see, like I think it's like a white coyote versus a black or brown coyote, like you have like that's a bad or good omen, and so you want to stay afar from that. And crazy because we didn't get a
Wow.
chance to go to that, but Interesting that you're bringing that up because it reminds me so much of that urban legend out there.
I didn't know that.
I've heard similar, like from indigenous folk stories and stuff like that, where there's like some kind of good and bad, like whether it's like a spirit or like an animal. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if they're always black or white, but like it's like a thing, like a
Wait, why
theme,
did
I
it skip
guess.
Mexico? Just skipped Central America, skip, and then United States.
Yeah, because I don't know of any Mexican stories of like a white and black like animal that's good and bad. But there are like, black horses with like, like el charro negro or el jinete negro, same thing, really. And there's people that say there's like stories of big black dogs, but they're usually like something else in Mexico. It's usually like a shape-shifting creature, like, oh, that's a nahual.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's a big black dog, or like, oh, that's a werewolf, like straight up. So, but in El Salvador, it's specifically el Cadejo.
Wow. No, thank you for sharing that. I did know about the Cadejo, but I didn't know like the connections with the Siwanaba in that respect. Um, and it's interesting too because for people that are wondering, oh, the dog, this, yeah, there, like you were saying earlier, there's urban legends with a demonic dog in different parts of the world. I know Black Shuck, I think in the UK is their version of that, where like there's actually a church that has like these like claws on the church door from like when the dog broke into the church and like scared people off or something like that.
Oh.
No other door intrigue will ever be as interesting as this church's door entrance. This is the entrance to the Holy Trinity Church of Blisburg, England. While it's true that this door may have some aging marks to it, they're not just any marks. You see, on August 15th of 1577, during a thunderstorm, a beast broke through while people were congregating. It was said that this beast ended up killing a man and a child. The remains of that tragic day is the markings on the door. You see, Blackshock left these markings as he was leaving the church forever ago. And it just reminds me so much of what you're saying, where it's just like there's this is eerie how there's like the demonic dog all over the world. And you said it in the panel, and I love that you said this. You said that there's more to it than just a scary dog. It really goes back to colonialism and when they were colonizing people in El Salvador and in Central America. Um, but why do you like the La Siwanaba? What can you share a little bit what the Siwanaba is and what do you like about the La Siwanaba?
Well, they say that she goes after, and I'm not really good at remembering anything. So like
You're
I
good.
know Christina remembers her her like origin story or whatever. At least I think that you do. But I
I
know
do.
that she like goes after like drunk men or like cheating men, and that's really what I love.
And that is why
Also,
Carmen
she's
is
so
her fan.
confident with her long boobs.
That
She doesn't care
I
about the clapping sound that they make. She doesn't need a bra. And I just really love the confidence.
when I first read that about her, that she's coming because she's running and you can hear her boobs clapping together. Oh my god, the I could not stop laughing.
In a way, like, and I meant to ask you guys this. So I, I feel like La Llorona and La Siwana have so many similarities, just different names. Is that correct? Because like I feel like that's something that I grew up kind of understanding, but as I got older, I started to hear different variations. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, I would say it's the same type of like, what are they called? They have a name, like a scorned woman spirit.
Okay,
Like
that's what I was
these
about to
are
say.
everywhere, all over the world. So like La Llorona is obviously all over Latin America, including El Salvador. La Llorona's there too. So La Ciguanaba, it's another version of the same type of story that is told everywhere. But to me, they're not the same thing because they have very different origin stories. Like I think the one we all know about La Llorona is that similar one where she has her children and she kills them because the love of her life leaves her, and now she's cursed to haunt, rivers and creeks, seeking the children she killed, and she's crying out for them. Ay, mis hijos, ay, mis hijos. Um, just like that. Ay, mis hijos. And La Ciguanaba, on the other hand, there's a couple different versions, but like the most common one is that this is again before colonial times. And there's also like, stories that she was made up by the Spanish. But the story is that she was a woman named Sibawet, which means beautiful woman in Nahua. And she was married to the prince Yesun. And Yesun is the son of the god Tlaloc, which I don't remember what he's the god of right now. Rain, maybe? Could be wrong. But So that's who she's with. Yesun leaves for war, and for some reason, Siva Wed, like she's not happy with that. She needs more. She wants to be like queen or princess or ruler by herself. So she makes this plan to kill Yesun. She goes to a witch, and she gets some potion to kill Yesun when he comes back from war. And when he comes back, they hold like some sort of like celebration party, and then she gives Yesun this potion in the middle of the celebration. I don't know if she just wanted like the drama of it because she could have done it in private, but she didn't. And but then something goes wrong with the potion, and he turns into a giant monster, and then he has to be killed by like all the guards. And it's a big scene. And then Tlaloc finds out that, Siwa Wet was the one who did this. And so he curses her, and she's no longer a beautiful woman. He takes that from her. Now she is going to have the face of a horse, and she is cursed to, live for eternity. But at the same time, her poor son is out here catching strays because he gets cursed too. And that's Tlaloc's grandson, but no. So he curses poor the Cipitillo is his name. So he curses Cipitillo. He's also gonna live forever, and he basically only lives to like not annoy, but like play tricks on people. Like he's like an elfster type thing, and so he is never gonna grow. He's gonna be the size of like an 8-year-old basically. His belly is distended. Oh, because on top of everything, Siva Wet didn't take care of Cipitillo. She was out here cheating on Yesun while he was out
She
in
was
war.
a little neglectful.
She was a little
Just a
neglectful,
little
yeah.
Just a little.
Because his stomach is distended because he eats ashes to try and feed himself because she won't feed him. So
Wow.
he's always depicted with a giant belly. His feet were turned backwards. He's got, the little pointy hat. And he is, whenever there's stories of Cipitillo, it's that he was seen eating ashes, or like you go into, because back then they had the kitchen stoves that you had to put firewood into it to get it going. And so if you
Mhm.
went into the kitchen the next morning and there were ashes everywhere, it's because the Cipitillo was there. And so he's out here, roaming around, and so is the Sigunaba. And she's like roaming the rivers, and she's cursed to not hunt, but I guess like lure men to their deaths, or they go crazy when they see her. And yeah, that's the story of Lesigüenaba that I'm most familiar with.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I've never heard of that, the background origins of La Siwanava in that respect. I've always just been like, it's La Llorona. I'm like, okay. So I appreciate that in detail. I mean, I know for when I was narrating over for Something Scary, we did cover a few of La Siwanava stories, but not to this extent. So I do appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's the beauty of these lores, is that there's so much more, and if you dive deeper, it just keeps going and going, and people have slight different versions of it, but you'll find the similarities too at the same time. Doesn't matter where you're from in terms of Central America. And I always say that every time I would share these stories, I'm like, you might have heard this version, but I heard this version, so I'm just gonna share my version.
Right, yeah, because in Guatemala, she's also known as La Segua, or I don't remember if that's Honduras, but it's the same thing, and their origin story is a little bit different, but they look the same, a horse-faced woman. And I believe that Yucatan also has a story of like a horse-faced woman, but she has a different name too, and a completely different like origin story.
Wow, that's interesting. And when you're talking about the CPTO, my grandfather claims allegedly that he saw it when he was a little boy. So I was like,
Always
okay.
grandfathers, yeah.
It's always the grandfathers. I was like, I wonder what you were doing that day. But
Right.
So one of my favorite Salvadorian urban legends is La Carreta Chillona, or better known as the squeaky wheel or the wailing carriage. It has different names, however you translate it. And my mom claims that she heard it in the middle of the night. So, I'll plug it in the story here. So basically, my mom was a very young girl in El Salvador, and she lived out in my family lived out outside of the capital. They lived out in the boonies in the countryside, you would say, more or less. And I remember that she was telling me that a lot of things kept them up at night. Like they would have the machete, like every Salvadorian family does, because there's creatures out there.
Yes,
the infamous Salvadorian machete. So, so they would, obviously be alert for any animals. They even had a lot of dogs because they wanted to alert off any predators and stuff. And they were also farmers. And so, anyway, one night though, as the sun was setting down, they heard this wailing, like something was crying out in the middle of the night. And so everyone started to freak out. My grandparents, her parents, told her to stay away from the doors, just, stay close together, ignore it, everything will be fine. And they started to hear what sounded like a carriage approaching closer with the wailings. And she claims that she heard like the roof tremble, like something was walking up on the roof. And for those of you guys, if you've ever been in El Salvador, some houses have this interesting architecture where the roof isn't really necessarily connected to the house, if that makes sense. I don't know if you guys have seen that architecture where it's like there's this big. For me, it freaks me out. My OCD with bugs.
Yeah.
Like, hello, why is this here? Like, okay,
Steal it now.
yeah. So, if I remember correctly, I know she mentioned that now that I'm telling the story. I think she says she saw like something like move, like climb up there, but she was so scared that she couldn't see very well. But they, again, kept away from any opening and they were hearing the wailing. And eventually my mom got curious and she was trying to tiptoe closer to like either the window or the opening. And my grandmother grabbed her. She's like, don't look at it. Don't get out there because it will take you. And that just freaked me out because the idea of like something wailing and crying in the middle of the night and you're hearing a carriage, and the idea is that the carriage is made out of bones. And I know there's different variations of it, but some people say that there's like these invisible horses. I've never heard that version. I just hear it's just a carriage made of bones. But it is a creepy thing. And then when I looked into this is like it came from like an epidemic of the 1800s. The how do you say it? Cholera epidemic. So people think it comes from that. And there's also like the infamous story of Terencio Perez, who, the colonizer who took basically like resources and learned natural herbal medicine from the natives and didn't give anything back. And then he was punished to basically carry or push the carriage around. So that's the curse. And I think these stories just have such interesting roots, whether it's La Cibonava, La Carreta Chillona, El Cadejo. These are all from like colonial times, colonization. And it's so fascinating to see how these stories have lived on since then. And in a way, it just kind of goes to show the gravity of the stories that people would tell to keep somewhat of this remembrance alive, like how tragic some of these things were, whether they were ghostly urban legends or rooted in reality that's a lot more tragic than what we're being told.
Right. And to go back to I don't remember if it's cholera or cholera. I think it's cholera now that I think about it.
Cholera.
Yeah.
Cholera.
But that is like it's also in Mexico, and it's because it was the same thing, the epidemic infected everyone, but basically there was too many people dying, so they were collecting them in carts. And so the memory of the cart and people being, collected in carts persists, even though, obviously people are not, dying in that amount where there's a cart that needs to collect them. I mean, so it's like so weird to see that story is everywhere. But even in Nicaragua, it's the Carreta, and it goes back to even before cholera. There's a version that's tied to like the cholera epidemic, but also again back to colonial times where the Spanish were going around enslaving indigenous people, and they were going from like pueblo to pueblo in this cart and putting them in the cart, and people that were taken by the cart were never seen again. And so this memory of a deathly cart, it persists, and it's just fascinating but also sad.
Yeah, it's really sad, and it just goes to show like how generation we're being told these stories. And I love that in the panel you talked about that, where these stories have deeper meanings. And I always say this, like ghost stories, urban legends, they're history, and it really is so important who tells these stories, because I feel like it could only be like you guys or even myself where we are going to take the care to really dig deep into these stories rather than the superficial level of what it means and be like, oh, it's just a bantam dog, and then move on.
Right, yeah.
Okay, cool. So speaking of like impact across generations, we're now going to segue into the like things about twins and reincarnation and all of that stuff, because sometimes they say that trauma is affected with reincarnation and family. Like you guys were talking about family, your mom and your brother, how much they look so much alike and they have the same ability to tap into the supernatural and the otherworldly. And so I think it's a good segue to talk about that because you guys are twins. And I'm like, what better story to tell than that of the Pollock twins? So let me read the summary and then I will ask you guys a couple of questions throughout this. So, in 1957, in a small town of Hexham, England, 11-year-old Joanna Pollock and her younger sister, 6-year-old Jacqueline, were tragically killed by a driver under the influence of drugs. The driver, a local woman who had been separated from her own children, intentionally hit the girls along with their friend, Anthony, who also died from his injuries. Following the deaths, the girls' parents, John and Florence Pollock, were devastated. John, a devout Catholic, believed that Joanna and Jacqueline would be reincarnated as twins. Although Florence initially rejected this idea, despite the odds and the lack of family history of twins, Florence gave birth to identical twin girls, Jillian and Jennifer, on October 4th, 1958. So before we proceed this, have you guys ever encountered any cases or stories where people remember things of the past in terms of reincarnation of past lives? Because like, there's just no way that they would know this in this lifetime.
I wouldn't say like personal ones. I know there's a Mexican radio show that I'm obsessed with called La Mano Peluda. It's been going on for years. And there was a story where someone called in about their creepy ass little kid. His name is Alex. And in the story, I think he's like 8 or something. I don't remember his age, but the guy's like the father of this, little kid. He's like, he knows things he shouldn't. He tells us that his we're not his family, we're not his parents, that he's actually from this other town. And so we went to the other town and then he showed us the graves of his supposed parents and how he died. He said he was on horse and he fell and he hit his head. And when we talked to the family of this person, that is how they died. So like how would he know these things? So like I know there's stories out there and they're so creepy to me, but also
Yeah.
fascinating. But like I've never personally had experience with it, but just hearing things, it definitely is strange.
Yeah, definitely. So we know that reincarnation, there's stories around the world, which is just kind of compelling in a way, especially because when younger children that are not supposed to know these details of tragedy and trauma come up and starts telling these stories, and then they're fact checked, and then they go, like you said, they go to the town or they read about it and they find evidence. Like it's kind of hard to dismiss that, right? So, going back to the story, the twins had different birthmarks, with Jennifer's matching those of Jacqueline's birthmarks and scars, and as they grew older, the twins displayed knowledge of Hexham and specific landmarks despite never having been there, like you were saying in yours, the Mexican story. They also identified their late sister's toys and divided them exactly as Joanna and Jacqueline did. So, with that being said, have you ever heard of this phenomenon where people die and then they have a birthmark? Like, I've done readings for people in the past, and I will point at a birthmark, and I'm like, so I think recently it was this client of mine. I said, so I'm picking up on your past life, and I was talking about some of the things, and I said, so I think. I noticed that you have a mole here. I think that you were shot through the chest because we're going through all these details. And she said to me, what's scary? She's like, I'm so scared of like my heart or anything being checked. She's like, I don't want to do anything regarding my heart or hearing a heartbeat or anything like that. And it's interesting that you're mentioning my past life and maybe the mole might be connected to that because I don't want to hear any of that, which is eerie to think about. What do you guys think of birthmarks and reincarnation?
That's super interesting. I definitely think like it's possible, but I also think it's a way old way of people to find comfort in
Mm-hmm.
death because it's scary. Like we don't know what happens, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it could be comforting to think, oh, like you'll be reincarnated into you know, another
Yeah.
life. But yeah, I mean, there's stories out there of things like that I don't know. I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, like, for one hand, I can see why people, like, believe in reincarnation because it could definitely be comforting, but then in the case of, like, the story you're telling me about La Mano Peluda and the little Mexican boy and talking about his past life, like, it's hard to dismiss that, and you kinda wanna figure out, like, how? How? Okay. So the twins exhibited behaviors and preferences similar to their deceased sisters. Florence overheard them talking about the car accident in detail, which eventually convinced her of the possibility of reincarnation. The twins also had recurring nightmares about being hit by a car and showed a strong fear of cars. As they aged, the twins' memories of their past lives faded. However, Jillian later recalled visions of a place she had never visited but matched the home where Joanna had lived. So I know there's a couple questions here, but I don't want to be repetitive with this. But do you think that with this case, that perhaps maybe like they were just picking up on the death of their past sisters through their parents, or do you think that maybe like because there's this thing where they recently talked about how families and people that share DNA, like memories can be passed down. I don't know to this extent, but like personality, we know that personality is molded by DNA, but also environment. What are your thoughts on that? Like whether like past life and memories?
With these twins, because I've read about it or listened to a few podcasts about it too, but I do feel like part of it was informed by their parents. Like they surely they probably heard the story of the twins' death because something so traumatic. These things are repeated, even if you don't mean to. I think they're gonna come out. So I do think part of it is that they probably heard some of it, but I think at the same time there was also things that just couldn't be not everything could be explained by like, oh, they heard it, or this or this, because they were like quite young. So they could be
Mhm.
just like subconsciously picking up on it too, which I do think is like it's very possible. As well as like you were saying, hear stories or like temperaments of someone like, oh, my great grandma was so moody and she's just like my brother, or things like that, like for a specific example. Cause yeah. But yeah, no, I do. So like part of it, I do think part of it was true what the twins were experiencing. And I think part of it was also that they were also being informed by their environment. But I think like both things can be very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any thoughts, Carmen? Or
No, I was gonna say literally the same thing.
okay.
Twins.
Ding. No, yeah, I think I find the whole twin thing very interesting. And, like to end it off, of course, it did say that the Pollock twins is a very co- compelling, but you're right. Like people do think that perhaps, the memories were probably influenced by older brothers or other external factors. I do think it's really compelling that, they had birthmarks and they also knew about like the houses that one of the
Yeah.
sisters lived in. Like, I think that's kind of interesting. But I definitely could see my skepticism side also pull in here, and I'm like, no, I do think that family could have influenced that. But to your point, like the Mano Peluda, I want to give a shout out to them real quick because I love that podcast too. It's so good. It's all in Spanish, but it's really good. And they do have some really good stories like the one that you just shared. Now, not too long ago, I'm going to put it in post, but I do have a book where this guy, he was an academic. All right, so the person that was pointing out here was Ian Stevenson, and the book that I was also referring to is Reincarnation: A New Horizon in Science, Religion, and Society by Sylvia Cranston and Carrie Williams. Now, he was the director, well, he was a chairman at the University of Virginia School of Medicine, and he was a professor at the University of Virginia School of Medicine for 50 years. So that's a little bit about him. I would really look up his work if you are interested in learning more about reincarnation. And he only studies cases where children, like very young children, where they couldn't possibly know details or things of that nature. Because we can all agree that the older you get, the more you experience life, the more you start to understand, like whether it's aviation, whether it's like working on a cruise ship or being in war, like children don't get that concept. They have a very simplified concept, if that. They can't really comprehend those those things and the gravity of that. So he started studying a lot of children, and would say that anything past that, he was very skeptical about. So he would only like reassess children in those cases, and he wrote down a lot of cases of ones that he felt like, oh my God, how did they know about this home in a different part of the world? Like there was this girl that lived in the UK, but she was having all these recollections of somewhere in Southeast India, and they had to go and like, they went there to fact check things, and apparently they were finding evidence of this village and these people and all these tragedies. So it's like in that case, it's like it's completely different part of the world. How does
Yeah,
she
how
know
do you
that?
explain that? Because again,
Mhm.
with these twins, and it's all so close, you can, if you really like try to, you can explain it as well. They're in the same place, it's the same family. It's not generations ago that they're like they were reincarnated. It's literally their siblings that passed away a few years before them. So, you could like explain it a little bit, but when it's like things like that, where across the ocean, different cultures, like they've never read about
Pre-internet also.
this pre-internet. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, that's where it's like this doesn't make sense anymore.
Right. Right. So it's just in those cases I do find them compelling, but in other cases, like, there's I don't want to speak too much on it because I don't want this, if they ever find it, I don't want them to get offended. He was claiming that he feels like he's the reincarnation of this historical figure out there. And I did do like a card reading on him, like an oracle card reading. I didn't use tarot, but oracle cards are similar in some aspects. And the cards, I swear to God, I need a slogan. The cards don't lie. But I was like, I kind of got the feeling that he was more in love with the idea of being reincarnated of historical figure rather than really exhibiting anything compelling to me of like, well, what is it that you know exactly that we don't know that is in history books of this historical figure? And it just felt more romanticized. So I can see also why, like, when people come forward as an adult, like there's that case of this woman who thought she was the reincarnation of Marilyn Monroe, but nothing about her really exhibited anything compelling of Marilyn Monroe and like what exactly she knew that was so different than what's already out there,
Right.
So I think it's a give and take, right? Like really assessing the stories. But do you guys believe in reincarnation, or like what are your thoughts on it? On a scale 1 through 10, what do you like? Do you believe in reincarnation, or what's on a scale 1 through 10? How much do you believe in it?
I'd probably say 7 or 8. Like I do think it's probably possible, especially in cultures where it's like it is their belief, it is their religion. I feel like that's probably where it's the most real. Like what is it? Hinduism, I want to say it's
I think so. Like
right?
Buddhism too, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. And so I want to say if anyone was going to experience it first, it'd be them for sure, not me. But whether I do think it's possible because I feel like anything is possible, really. Like I wouldn't like I always like look at things like, is there another explanation? But if there isn't, and if it's like yeah, it's possible. I think it for sure is possible.
I'm looking it up right now, but there was like this like it was a book, or no, it was a movie. Oh, I think I found it. And it was on Netflix, and it's called The Unmistaken Child. And it's basically about how they like track down let me just read the summary so I don't sound silly. In Nepal, a vulnerable monk dies, and one of his disciples, a youthful monk named Tenzin, searches for his master's reincarnation. So it's like this whole process on how they find the reincarnation of like the monks and like higher figures in their culture and belief system. And that was really fascinating. So I would definitely recommend people to watch it if they can. I don't think it's on Netflix anymore. It says here that's on Prime Video, so you could probably search for
Okay.
it there. And I'll probably plug it in the description. But nonetheless, to me, it was so interesting because like they have a whole map, and they go in and do a series of testing with younger children. And I'm like, dang, that is very fascinating. So I don't know. I mean, yeah. My question for you, Carmen, on a scale 1 through 10, how much do you believe in reincarnation?
I feel like I would say like maybe like 6 out of 10. 7, 6, 6, 7,
Oh.
6.75.
Okay. I said 7 or 8. I knew you were going to be a little lower though.
Yeah.
Would you be open to the possibility of ever doing like a past life regression and seeing if you guys were connected in a past life? Or could you see that being
I
a possibility?
would.
I would
I
be
would.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? It made me think when you were talking about your client that kept having, I don't know if you said she was having nightmares of being shot or that you saw that and then she connected it to being scared of like having
Yeah.
yeah. It made me think of like I have it's sort of a recurring nightmare, but it maybe happens like once every like few years of me being stabbed in my back or shot in my back. Yeah.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember you ever tell me this,
Yeah, I
Carmen.
told you that I
Oh, I
had
forgot.
the one I remember the most. I know you forgot. Is
Yeah.
the one is we used to live in this house that it was 2 floors, but it had like a half like in the middle. It was like a little half floor, and there was like a half bathroom, and it was like a
Oh, those have
platform.
names, those type of
They do,
entrances,
but I
but I
don't
don't
remember
remember.
anything
Yeah.
about like
Basically, you open the
house
door and it's a little platform, and then the stairs go up
or
or down.
split. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so that's the house that we used to live in. That is when I have this dream. That's where it's set, and it's Christmas time, and it's terrible, honestly. This Christmas caroler dressed up as Santa comes to the door, and he like starts singing, but I could tell it was something was off right away. And then like I start screaming, but my voice is gone, and I can't scream, and I turn around and he either like stabs me in the back and then I like start like crawling up the stairs, or he like shoots me and then I try warning the rest of the family that's in the house, but my voice doesn't work. And that's like a recurring nightmare that I have every few years.
That's horrifying.
Yeah, it is. I wake up in like full blown like sweats, like
Wow.
drenched. Yeah.
What's interesting about that is that I feel like when you were telling that story, it kind of parallels to my experience where I kept having the recurring dream of like sacrificing myself. And it wasn't until like basically sacrificing my life for someone else, basically. And it just kept happening. I would wake up I would wake up in sweats. I would wake up panicking. It is not a good feeling. And it wasn't until I did a past life regression and I saw my past lives that it stopped. The dream stopped.
Oh,
So-
interesting.
Yeah. So like I finally understood a little bit better as to why I kept having these like reoccurring dreams. And it was connected with like a couple of past lives of me, like either basically being framed and then being killed, or me like giving up my freedom for my family.
Wow.
So yeah, it's interesting. So it sounds to me that there's something within your inner self that is trying to tell you of that. So I guess that was also that's the message, maybe, is that you need to do the past life thing. I feel it very strongly with you guys. I feel it very strongly with you guys. Even when I met you guys, I was like, oh, okay, so you guys definitely have known each other for a while. And I feel like one of you like is more like not masculine and like physically, but energetically wise. Like you think more on this like logical, grounded masculine side, and the other one is not. So it almost makes me think that you guys were either like, I guess I'm reading you guys. Sorry.
No, this is exciting.
So it's like it feels like even like a marriage.
I was gonna say, were we lovers? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Carmen.
Which is why like you guys are very like, one is like, Christina, you're more like out there and bubblier, and then Carmen's more grounded. It's very much a parallel of like the feminine and masculine energy, like a yin and the yang. Like I don't mean it physically, I mean it more like just the way you guys like logically and emotionally.
No, that's very accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel it very deeply. So anyway, I just wanted to give you guys that. I think if you did a past life, it would definitely, you guys would learn more about that.
We should do it, Carmen.
Yeah, I'm
Cool. Well, I know we're almost at time, so I wanted to ask you guys, what do you guys have planned for the next future that the viewers can look out for and check your workout?
Oh man, I feel like we have so many plans and so little time. We let's see. We have book club episodes coming out soon. We just read Vampires of El Norte, and we're finally going to record that. We're also going to start doing a once a month, maybe all in Spanish episode of stories we've already talked about, but just so we need to practice our Spanish. And so everyone else, like listeners that also want to practice their Spanish, that too. And then, I don't know, just more, I mean, obviously on normal episodes as well. Yeah, I don't know what else. You want to add anything else, Carmen?
I don't think so.
Awesome. Well, where can people find you guys?
At Espooky Tales, so spooky but with like an E in front of it, like Espooky, like when you say I'm scared or I want some Sprite, so like that. So Espooky Tales, everywhere really. Our website, that's what it is, just spookytales.com. TikTok, Instagram, it's the ones I use the most. Threads, I started using a little more, but I don't know how. It's weird. Threads is weird, but
yes, it is.
Yeah, it's been going surprisingly well. I don't know why. But we're at Spooky Tales everywhere. And then we also have a history podcast, I guess I could mention. It's called Historias Unknown, where we just talk about like Latin American history. Although I will add that it's a little like, so some people use the word bias. I don't personally, but it's a little left leaning, you could say. One could say. So if that's not your jam, then don't listen.
And don't tell us that's not your jam. We don't want to hear it.
We've already seen too many 1-star reviews.
Oh no. I'll have to go on there and give you guys a 5-star review.
Thank you.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much for being on the podcast. We covered a lot of fun stuff, and I will have to have you guys come back on because I feel like we could definitely dive into other things as well. So remember, everybody, stay strange.
We did our best.